Okay, welcome to the show. Oh my goodness. This is going to be a fun one today. I have my grounding chakra candle that my son lit for me, Kris.
I love it.
Do you love it?
I do.
And I think it's a really appropriate gesture. He had no idea who I was interviewing today. He's here in the house with us. And I think it's really appropriate that I am actually interviewing a fellow yogi, meditator, crystal follower. I mean, we do it all together.
All the things.
You're my woo woo partner.
I will gladly take that title.
So I just want to welcome everybody to the show right now. I have one of my dearest friends, Kris Rice, on the show today. And it's taken a little bit of time. And I don't want to say that I've had to twist your arm because that's not true. But I have been gently nudging, whispering maybe in your ear for a while
Mhm.
that I felt like your story and your business and everything that you're about was so relevant to the listeners of the show, the theme of the show. And I just am so proud of you for finally giving in and saying, okay, Dawn.
It took a lot of tapping, a lot of meditating, and it all finally came out.
A lot of EFT tapping. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so funny. Okay, so let me describe our relationship to everybody. So, Kris Rice um, is the owner, creator, founder. I mean, you everything. It's your business of an
Fine.
online, amazing company called Deconstructing Wellness, which we will have all of the notes and everything on how people can find you on Instagram. You're in the process of rebranding the name.
I am.
Okay. And part of that is because there has been a shift in a really positive way and an awakening, we could call it,
Yep.
as to what your mission truly is, or it's come to full fruition, I would say, for you, which we're going to talk about today, that has shifted a little bit away from why you originally started the whole thing, right?
Very well said. Yes.
Okay. So I understand that because I started this podcast with one mission in mind and it has completely shifted.
Hmm.
So it's really funny how that works.
It is.
So Kris is not only very successful, entrepreneur in her own right, but she happens to be one of my good friends, and her husband and my husband are old fraternity brothers. And I say old because I feel like they're old now.
They're a little old now. Yeah.
I mean, they've been friends for 30 years? No, 25 years? What do you think? It's now.
Yeah, 25 years. They're kind of like grumpy old men, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, for
They're
sure.
totally like that movie.
And I mean, we have just come, you and I have come full circle. So I will let everybody know kind of how this started out. Kris and I met, how many years ago has it been? 15?
I was thinking that 15. Yeah.
Okay. So you are younger than I am, which is a little annoying, but and always has been, and you look exactly the same. And we started out, I think we were both, we've done a lot of growing, personal growth, spiritual growth. But we started out not really vibing for a while.
Yeah. It was a
And I
little bit
think,
of a miss.
yeah, and I think it was hard because our husbands were so close,
Hmm.
right? And there just was not a connection. There was not a love connection. What do you think it
Hmm.
was?
I think I was young. I think I was just young and like figuring things out and like
Yeah.
trying to figure out early married life. And I came into a really big but amazing group of friends, which as somebody who has like a close little group of friends usually is kind of overwhelming. So I think it was kind of like figuring out my path and all of that.
Yeah. Because are
Yeah.
you kind of an introvert?
I'm kind of a mix, I
You're a
think.
mix. Okay.
I think I'm more of an extrovert than I give myself credit for, but I definitely am an introvert to a large extent too. I'm a
Yeah.
blend for sure.
Well, let's go ahead and blame the disconnect all on you.
Obviously.
um, No, I think it's really interesting because, I'm a lot when you first meet me, and if you're not someone who hasn't really figured out that out of the gates, you might be like, "Wow, she's overwhelming," in a
Mhm,
good way, but maybe not, right? And so I take part in all of that, and I think that we just were so misaligned, and it's just
mhm.
hilarious that now I mean, we
I know.
are like, you're the first person I think to call when there's something going
I
on.
know. For like big stuff, you are too. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like day-to-day little things I'll fire off other ways. But if I like that day when I called you in the backyard, I was like, Dawn, I need you this afternoon. You're like, great, what
yeah,
time?
yeah, yeah, and it's amazing because what's so beautiful for the listeners to hear is that we kind of came together at the same moment in time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, with meditation and yoga. I think I was doing yoga a little bit before. I was trying to get you into yoga with me, but you were like, "I don't wanna do it, I don't wanna do it." Now
Yeah.
you're, like, way more into it than I am at this point.
Well,
And
back when we could go to studios, yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and then, like, meditating together and, or just meditating, doing yoga, but everything just kind of fell into place where we were
Yeah.
kind of walking the same spiritual path together,
hmm
right?
We're really like, I feel like none of those pieces were things that like I really knew about that much, or like kind of as they became pieces that I was more aware of, you also were kind of discovering them at the same time. So I do think there was like an alignment there for sure.
There was a total alignment,
Yeah.
and so when you started your company,
Mhm.
it was so exciting for me because I was like, "What is she doing? What is this?" And I think what's been great to watch is, and I want you to talk a little bit about what it is and tell everybody, is that, I feel like most entrepreneurs kind of start out with one idea of what they want, what they think, and and a good entrepreneur is someone who just kind of adapts and goes with the flow
Yeah,
because things shift and change. And if you're very
totally.
regimented and you're very like, I need it to be exactly this way, which I do know that is something that you struggle with a little bit, but you've had to shift your mindset around that.
hmm hmm
If you are someone who's really rigid, it's really hard to kind of get your company to take off, right?
hmm
Because it's not a super clear definition yet to what you're doing because you're trying to like do something in a very specific format and that is not really what works, right?
Yeah,
So I feel like you kind of have figured that out. And so tell everybody what your online business is, and then we're going to talk about your story, which is really exciting.
absolutely. So I do holistic health coaching. So I think as you were saying, like as we discovered yoga and all of like the inner work pieces, that was really what drew me to mindfulness and wellness in general. And I felt like I was really overwhelmed by the idea of like where to start on most things, like because that just wasn't something that I like grew up along with. So
Yeah.
as I discovered it, I just really felt passionate about sharing that with other people. Like, can I shortcut your journey to feeling better? Can I help you feel like a better version of yourself without having to do all the searching? Like, I wanted to be sort of a funnel of information to be able to be like, hey, if you're looking for this, these things work great for me, give them a try. And so really that was like the impetus of it. I just wanted to serve and support women that, it's hard being a mom, a working mom, all of those things, and you end up very last on the list unless you fight to come up on that list. And so I think that was really a lot of what made me want to support women in a coaching setting. And it's been an experiment to figure out like, what does that mean? I don't want it to be super general. And so that was where certainly the awakening happened of really realizing what I have to serve and support people with,
Yeah.
because there's an authentic story there that I do believe can help people.
Yes. And I think that there are so many life coaches, holistic coaches out there.
Yeah,
And that's okay because everybody,
totally.
to each his own. But from an outsider looking in before I joined your membership, your online membership, which is great, by the way. So we'll talk about that. Um, I there were a lot of things that were super relevant to me. And
Mhm,
there was a piece that was missing. Right.
mhm. Agreed.
And I couldn't figure it out. And I kept thinking, because I know you so well, but yet you are someone, and I'm sure you would agree with this. Tell me if I'm wrong, but is somewhat guarded about certain things.
Mhm.
And I knew a year ago, I'm like, I'm getting her on this fucking podcast. It's gonna happen.
And I
And
kept thinking like, I'll say yes, but what am I going to talk about?
exactly, exactly. And I even remember saying to Ryan, like, there is a story. And I know what the story is because I can see it so clearly as her friend.
Mm,
And because I, have a son with mental illness. And so I kept thinking she is holding out. She is holding back. And what's so beautiful is to see that we all come into our own when it's the right time.
agreed.
And you figured it out.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why you're doing this new rebranding. So let's
Mhm.
back up a second and let's kind of set the stage because I don't want to get too far ahead. But
Yeah.
you grew up, tell me how you grew up with your grandmother because it's really significant and relevant to this whole kind of foundation of your story.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in a suburb of Portland, Oregon. So I've been in Oregon almost my whole entire life. And I mean, I grew up with a really wonderful, loving, and supporting family. I am very, very blessed in the family that we have. We're very close still, and I'm really proud of that. And so I grew up in a really loving household. I also was very, very close with my grandma growing up. We would stay over at my grandparents' house. Like in my mind, it was every weekend. I don't know if it really was or not, but I mean, those are just my favorite memories, like traveling as a family with them and waking up on Saturday morning and being there and like staying up late and watching TV with her. And she and I just had a really special relationship. I am the oldest grandchild. And so I think I got all that goodness, and she and I were just very kindred souls.
Mm,
And the mental health piece that you kind of were alluding to is when I was 10, she shared with me that she had depression. And so it was on one of those sleepovers where she just said, I'm really sorry I can't get out of bed today. I want to hang out with you. I just can't and I'm sorry. And like in my head I can still picture that whole conversation transpiring because I didn't really know what it meant.
mm,
And so it was interesting, like looking back on that, it never changed our relationship. It probably strengthened it because I think I was one of probably the only kids that she shared that with. And it really, in hindsight, shaped how I view mental health because to me, she was never less for having that. It was something that I saw her as super brave because she really fought as hard as she could, and it was a challenge all the time. And
mhm,
so really seeing that even from her going from depression and bipolar to passing away from dementia, it was a really sad journey in the end. But what I'm really, really proud of our family is that we really shifted from the old school traditional, like, one Papa will take care of Grandy and he will take care of her and we'll kind of go away until she needs to come back, and like a very more hushed version of what was happening.
mhm,
And then as she grew older and it really changed, he became the primary caregiver. It changed and we all had to come together, and there could be no
mm.
more like, okay, we can sweep this aside and like talk about it another time, i.e.
Yeah.
never. It was like, we got to come together. What is the best plan we can get for her? And it really shifted our whole family and how we interact together. It definitely took us to the next level, and I'm really proud of that.
I can't even, I mean, you think about our grandparents,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't even know if my grandparents, and I was really close to my grandparents and my
Mm.
great grandparents. I remember them really well growing up
Yeah.
because, as Italians, as you know, we just never die. So
No, no. We age well.
we age well. And so I I wonder if we had a ton of that in our family
Yeah.
and nobody ever talked about it because that was the generation, right?
And like how I think there's also a level of how much do you really know? You only know what you know. And I
Yeah.
think I really do believe people at the heart of it try the best they can with what they know. And that for that generation, that is a very different story than it is
Mhm.
for people growing up now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
so I
you
think that's a challenge.
so your grandfather was kind of like, I'm going to take care of this. We're going to keep it quiet for a while. We're going to do that. And then it became a, hey, I need some help. And so then everybody
Yeah.
came together is kind of the picture you've painted.
That's what I remember of it. I'm sure, I mean, there's an age gap, right, between my mom and her siblings and then me as the oldest grandchild. So I'm sure they were involved in those things to some degree. But as I shared with you, so my grandma, I believe, held everything together as much as she could to make it through my wedding, which was literally like her utopia. That was what she wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
I the
I
joy
remember
she
her
had.
at the
Oh my
wedding.
goodness.
Yeah.
She was so happy for that day.
Yeah.
And the next day she had, we believe, a series of strokes.
Mm.
So in my opinion, I feel like I lost her right after we got married. The real her, those strokes just took a lot out of her. And that was when it really shifted to like, okay, this isn't like a situational thing where sometimes we need to adjust medications. Sometimes we need to look at a new doctor. Like we're we're losing traction here. What's happening? So
Mm.
that was really what started like looking into like just throwing it all on the table. Like who can we go see? Who is the best in this? How can we get her help? And I
Mhm.
do really applaud my grandpa and our family in general for being really open and resourceful to that.
Yeah.
Because that might not be the case with everybody.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that was really when it shifted. Was after the strokes, it was just it really changed, and she made it for 11 years after that.
Gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember when she
yeah,
passed. And the thing that's interesting about that is that it really in lots of families that's kind of quiet, but
yeah,
what's really interesting about this story is that you were you were told about this at a young age so that you could understand it, try to understand it and become it kind of normalize it a little bit
yeah,
so that, if and when you ever had to experience that in your own life in any other
mm,
ways, you would be prepared. Isn't that funny
yeah.
how that works, right?
It is, and now that you say that, I really never thought about it to that extent, and I think of how when my girls were little and I would go take them over, even when she wasn't doing well, and it was really hard for me to go see them. It was amazing for my kids to go see her and be like, "We're just coloring together, like, this is no big deal." They didn't think anything different of it, and I do think that's really, I'm actually kind of proud of that, like, looking back
Yeah.
at it. I'm glad that I didn't think to, like, that might be uncomfortable for them. I won't do that. It was like, no, she's part of the family. We're going to go see her.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, setting the stage for this, for kind of this story, and, I think, do you feel like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you tell me if I'm wrong, but do you
Mm,
feel like you started this company, um, like when you really peel back why you did it, why you
mhm.
started it? Do you have an answer why you started it that's different than when kind of the story you told yourself when you started it? Is it different?
I think it's just a deeper layer of the same story. I started it very shortly after my grandma passed, and I knew that that our relationship and what I learned from her wasn't going to end with our story together ending. I knew that. And I knew
Mhm.
she was taking a big part in where this would go. I think I just didn't realize the generations that would come from that and
Yeah.
the deeper, like direct relationship for myself and how I would be um, supporting mental health.
Yeah. So let's get into that because that's
Yeah.
exciting. So your online community is quite a few of them are moms.
Mhm.
I think you probably have people that are a part of it that are not, and you're working with them in different ways. But there is a component to your business that really is untapped until now,
Mhm.
which I think is kind of this awakening, this realization of truly what this is, your company is really all meant to do and what and
Yeah.
meant to be. And sometimes we don't see those things,
Yeah.
right? Until we're ready to. So
Mhm.
I'd like to say for the record that I saw it because
I'm
I like to
amazed.
be right.
That's amazing. No, if you did, kudos to you because I didn't piece the pieces together for a while.
You did it. You did it. I know.
No.
Well, so I remember when you were pregnant,
Mhm.
and let's talk about that because
Yeah.
it took you some time to get pregnant. So what happened there?
It did. So we discovered probably within 3 or 4 months of trying that we would need to go through IVF to have kids. And
Hmm.
so I was thankful that we came to that realization earlier than not, because I know for a lot of people that could take a lot longer.
Hmm.
Yep. So yeah, we went down the IVF route, and it was, as I look back on it, I see that as one of my first like real trips to like the inner layers of mindfulness and manifesting. And I remember going into that process and, listening to the doctors and hearing what they said. And I was like, uh-huh, but I will have this baby. She will be a girl. I know all of these things are going to happen. So you can tell me all this stuff, but I literally know in my heart how this is going to play out. And I remember laying there after they put in the embryos and talking to little Sophie and being like, buddy, just stay put. I promise I'll give you the best home I can possibly give you. And I truly believe that I would not have it any other way. And I want to fully say that I know that there's a lot of other people that have had that belief and it hasn't come true. And I'm truly sorry that that's the case. But for anybody who is going through that and needs that encouragement, please know that I truly believe that you can have an influence in how that plays out.
Yeah,
And
you
it happened
manifested her.
twice.
You manifested her. And
I did.
we were going through a similar, I think we were going through it maybe before you, right? The IVF.
I think you were a little before me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, we started too late. My eggs were old and dried up,
Well,
unfortunately.
these things happen.
And I'd like to blame it on Ryan, but I think it was me. But it's all meant to be the way it's supposed to be, right?
It is. It
And
is.
the process of IVF is extremely uh complicated as far not
Yeah.
just the scientific part of it, but like the emotions that you go
Mhm.
through
It
and
is.
the mental health that you that you go through during
Yeah.
that process, right?
Yeah.
And just the ups and downs and then the hormones. And I mean, you
Mm.
must have just been on, well, I know because I went through it
Yeah.
as well, but like were you just really on a roller coaster ride?
I felt like I mean, in typical fashion that I would be in, I was very like eye on the prize, charge ahead, and like I'll do X, Y, and Z, and I'll get to that point.
Yeah.
And so I think I was almost kind of like systematic in it
Hmm.
because I knew that we only had so many chances to try. So to me, like I kind of approached it with like, nope, this is gonna work out. I'm not gonna let it like get me down. I'm just gonna keep going through. But I will say it takes a village because our sweet friend Tara came over and gave me IVF shots when Andy was out of town. And
She gave
it's
them to
like
me
the
too.
oh bless her heart. I mean, it changes over time. And I
Yeah.
remember the second time we went through it to have my second daughter, it had really changed in the even that short amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's a lot on your body. It is.
It's a lot.
It is.
So there's a
Mhm.
mental health component there. So
Yeah.
you are someone that is very, like you said, very systematic, very, this black or white, this is where it's going to be. I'm going to do the
Mhm.
XYZ. And if I do this, I'll get this result. Right.
Mhm.
And so, um, and that's kind of always been you kind of your life, right? That's kind of who
Yeah.
you are. Would you say you're a little bit of a perfectionist?
Definitely. I think I'm better about it now, but
Yeah.
I think just my natural nature is to be that way. I mean, I come
Mhm.
from a really long line of very driven, very hardworking people, and we're super stubborn too. So
Yes.
I have a lot of those tendencies in me.
Yeah.
But I think I've softened them over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you definitely have. So as a perfectionist, because I am one as well,
Mhm,
that comes from a lot of things in childhood.
mhm.
And it definitely um, can come from, different, I mean, it's different for different people, but it can
Yeah,
definitely come from feeling of, you're not good enough, or, there's a varying array of, according to the people I've had on my podcast who've kind of
yeah.
delved into this, which is a little difficult for me to see from your perspective because you came from such a loving home and I
Mhm.
don't see that really in you. So I feel like you put a lot of it on your own, on yourself.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So, but you had this vision, and I remember this when you were pregnant, of, we all as moms are just like in love with being pregnant and what it's going to be like and how
Mhm.
wonderful it's going to be. And we have this preconceived notion of what are before they're ever born,
Yeah.
what the life is going to be like for them. It's like,
Mhm.
especially if we're perfectionists, we've got it all planned out,
Oh, totally.
right? Right. All planned out. And the hardest part is when you realize that you have no control over that. And
Mhm.
it isn't probably going to be anything like you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And in fact, you're going to be given in this life uh, what you need
Mhm.
to heal, if you believe in this or not, from previous lives or from some other karmic thing, right?
Mhm.
So I believe that
Mhm.
because it's true for me.
Yeah.
And I think that when I look at my son, he has made comments to me many times, and I'm sure that you're going to hear this from your
Mhm.
daughter at some point, that you are the only mom that I could have honestly had, mom, because this is what was said
Mm.
to me, because you're the one that was meant to be my mom,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
every time I hear him say that, and he says that to me often, I get
Oh.
really teary-eyed because I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
you're right. Like,
Yeah.
no one else would put up with your shit. But we are prepared for it. We are ready for it. We've
More than
been
we give ourselves credit for.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So you have this idealistic thought of like what it's going to be like to be a parent, what it's,
Mhm.
it's all going to be this, and you're never thinking of anything that could go wrong or go awry from
Yeah.
your vision of what's going to happen with your children,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So you had a little bit of a rude awakening there,
Yeah.
and this is definitely your journey and your story that we're sharing, not Sophie's. I want
Mhm.
to say that. But take the listeners through a little bit of like what you discovered, um, how you and your husband navigated through that, the
Yeah.
parenting, issues, and just kind of give us an overview of, kind of what the journey's been like and where things are now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that because I want to be really respectful. My daughter's 9 right now. And so I know that she's kind of at a cusp of like, things are changing for her, and I want to be really respectful of her story as hers. And
Mhm.
so from my perspective, um she was our first child, so I didn't know any different. I had been around kids my whole life, been around cousins and babysat forever. I was like, I got this, no problem at all. And then had like crazy expectations. I took 4 weeks off of work and then was like, oh, she gonna sit by my desk and totally like work beside me? Like, why would that be any big deal? I mean, totally ridiculous expectations of what can be done.
Right.
um, and so, I mean, I didn't have anything to compare it to. What I remember thinking, or I remember there being just like a flag of like, I wonder if other parents go through this when we let go of the crazy idea that I could work with her beside me, and then took her to a little preschool. And for 9 months, she screamed and clawed and did not want to let me go when I dropped her off for
Mm.
9 months every single day. And I just thought, like, do other people have to go through this gut wrenching pain every single day? Like, this seems like a lot that nobody talks about. And,
Mm.
so then 9 months went away, and like your mind does that beautiful thing of like, okay, well, it's over now. Tuck that aside. No big deal. Let it go. And then it really was once my second daughter was born, and we just started seeing things that were more pieces like that, where I caught myself saying, is life really this hard? Like,
Mm.
is life really this hard to eat breakfast, to get dressed, to brush your hair? Like, we would go and brush her hair, and she wanted her hair long, and it's kind of curly and crazy thick Italian hair. And I kid you not, like, any neighbor would have full reason to want to call Child Protective Services on us. She would scream bloody murder for the entire time that we would brush it every single day. And it was just things like that that
We're
there
super
were enough,
extreme.
there were
Extreme.
extremes, and there were
Yeah.
enough of them that I just remember thinking, I don't think that every parent goes through this, because I feel like somebody would say if they did. Like, this does not seem average.
You're
And
like, this is
so
something is not right. You're thinking,
something's
right?
just not right.
Mhm.
And so, um, but that's all I knew. I didn't know the answer. And as somebody who likes to have a lot of clarity and a lot of control over things, that's really hard to just be like, I don't like how it is. This doesn't feel right to me, but what, I don't know the answer. And I remember having that conversation with Andy and him being like, I don't know. I don't know. She's two. What do you do with that? I don't know. But I knew there had to be something else. So I put on my little sleuthing hat and started digging around, reached out to a friend who is now our guardian angel for all things Sophie. And she was
Mhm.
like, okay, let's hook you up with a really good occupational therapist. And so I was like, great. I thankfully am pretty open minded to literally whatever somebody will say. I'll at least give it an explore and see what may
Yeah.
come of it.
Can you talk
Um,
about what that is, what an occupational
yeah,
therapist does? Okay.
yeah, because I definitely didn't know. So when Andy heard therapist, he was like, "Good luck with that. Sit our little 2-year-old down in a chair and like talk to her. What are you gonna do?" And I
Mhm.
was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't think it's that. And so it was amazing, amazing. So at 2.5, she started seeing this woman who was so incredible. And she basically played with her. She did play therapy. And what we discovered in doing that was she had some sensory processing issues.
Okay.
And so that was why putting on clothes was really, really hard. That was why brushing her hair was excruciating. She wanted to eat the same waffle every single day for like years. Things like that, that I didn't realize there was any particular reason behind that. But again, I knew there was something that didn't seem average to me, didn't seem on track.
So let's talk about what a sensory processing disorder is, because Cole had been diagnosed with that at a young age as well, but not,
Mhm.
I think, not to the extreme that Sophie has. He had some other issues, but things like if he felt a certain fabric, like velvet,
Yeah,
even to this day,
yeah,
he is like his skin was literally crawling. Like he's like,
yes.
it can't touch me.
Mhm.
So is that pretty much what that disorder is about? Or
So
there
it's
other
been a
components?
little while. To be totally fair, I would highly recommend looking it up and gaining some more like resources around that. I would certainly recommend that, because from my perspective, the pieces that we had with her were very tactile. So it was like, for her, the seams on pants was like excruciating. She couldn't handle that. Or like, even to this day, tights, like something that's going to be really snug against her skin, she can't handle that. So it was those really tactile pieces. But what was amazing in the occupational therapy was she had no clue that she was unraveling the programming in her that told her this was not okay, that told her, to have these big outbursts over it. She had no idea. She was climbing through these little sails and thought she had the best playground in the whole world. So
Wow.
I think the thing that really I find so much hope in is it doesn't matter the age. And frankly, the younger and sooner you're okay to say, like, this is a flag. Like, let's just explore. And maybe it's nothing great. But if it is, giving you resources and your child resources at a
Mm,
really young age is incredible. So
yeah.
don't think that just because they're two, it's you can't do anything about it. There are incredible
Yeah.
resources there.
Or that it's like a normal thing, right?
Agree.
So like I think about Cole had colic for 8
Yeah.
months,
Hmm.
screamed his entire in for days.
Yeah.
And we switched formulas, I stopped breastfeeding, there are all these things.
Hmm.
And back then, there were no books about the I mean, there was Dr.
No.
Spock was the book when I was a mom, which you don't even probably know who that is, but I mean, half the shit in his book, I think was like everybody, no one believes in it anymore, And
Yeah.
so that was who I was listening to.
Hmm.
And, I think that's the important part that you're talking about is that when like this is what Dr. Rose said, and I know you listened to her
Hmm.
podcast with me, and she's phenomenal. Is that when you know something isn't right, like it's just off, and you have
Yeah.
that gut instinct, don't push through it and
Agree.
think, oh, it's just the age, or
Yes.
this will go away, right?
No.
Because it's
I
not something's wrong.
something is wrong, and you're
Mhm.
not being overreactive for thinking that there is too, because I think, especially, in any case, I think spouses can be misaligned in that just because you have
Mhm.
different places you're coming from. And
Mhm.
so if you're seeing that, I really believe as moms we have such a unique connection to our kids, and we know in our gut if we're willing to listen to it. But it can be really hard to listen to and be like, maybe this isn't, maybe something is wrong, you
Yeah,
know? But I really, if you can tap into that, and even if you can listen to that nagging voice that's just like, I don't know about this, then change can happen.
change can
Absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
So you fast forward, and then you uncover that in addition to that, she's got some other stuff kind of going on, right?
Yeah, she definitely suffers from anxiety, and we're trying to kind of figure out what that picture really looks like. I mean, like so many kids, almost a year ago when the whole pandemic started, like I really felt like she was getting her groove. She was starting to have great friendships at school. She loved school. She was doing other activities. Like she was in a really good place, and seemingly overnight her entire world got ripped out from under her.
Yeah.
So no kid's going to deal with that super easily. It's just hard. But I think that fast tracked other underlying
For
things that
sure.
were there. And so,
For sure.
it was no different than when she was 2 years old. And we're like, should it be this hard? And we got to a point where it was taking us 2, 3 hours to get her to bed, and everyone was crying and everyone was exhausted night after night after night. And it was just
Mm.
things like that that we were like, we're at our wits end, like we cannot continue life like this. What is going on? And so doing the same thing, like just kind of starting to ask questions and starting to just be curious about what could this be, because she deserves more than this. Like what's happening for her right now.
Yeah. What did you do? I know that you do a lot of really wonderful things with her
Mhm.
and also with your other daughter. And I want to just say, like, for people that are listening, if you are someone that meditates, well, first of all, if you haven't meditated and ever done it, you you got to do it. You got to try it, and try it with a guided meditation, right? That's always the
Yeah.
best way. Um, please don't say you can't meditate, because you can. And if you're
Yeah.
someone who says that, you're someone who needs to be who needs to be meditating. But the best part that I love, and I've loved this so much for so long about you, is that you meditate. You have your kids meditate,
We do.
and your kids tap.
I'm a big believer in, if I do something, like I'm going to make it in some way kid appropriate that they can do that alongside of me, whether that's cooking, or I'm looking at my Peloton right now. Like we lower the seat, they hop on there, they can do that. And meditating is definitely a piece that I started actually with tapping. So I fell in love with EFT tapping. I think it's just incredible. And I worked with my practitioner to come up with some ways to introduce that to our kids. And it was interesting because Soph globbed onto it right away. Like she loved the idea of it, but we do the side of the finger bed, nail beds, because she doesn't
Oh,
necessarily. Have you ever done that?
no. I'll
Oh,
have to try that.
so you literally pinch the sides of the nail beds. And so
Oh.
you could just sit here and do that while we're talking, right? So,
Oh, instead of
um,
tapping like on your face and doing the tapping
but
on your
same,
head
but
and
the same exact benefits of it. And so
oh,
for a
nice.
kid, like
Okay.
if they're escalated and they're not, they're not feeling great right now, tapping on their face, even rubbing those spots can be really like jarring for them. So for her, like we would do that as we went to bed. I'd lay there with her and talk to her and say our good nights and we'd tap on her fingers and she loved it. And then my other daughter was like, this is weird. I hate this. And then like 2 years later, she's like, Mom, will you tap on my fingers? And we've been doing it ever since. So kids come into it in their own timing. But
Totally.
I really believe like most things you can make them kid appropriate. And then I think that makes them it just builds some really great practices that other people they might not have learned till a lot later.
I'm going to ask you a question that is going to make you
Sure.
uncomfortable.
Okay. Thanks for the warning.
And it's not a judgment question, but I
Yeah.
want to ask it because I feel like someone who's listening might be wondering this and also might be feeling this if they're in the same shoes as you and they're not sure about their kid
Hmm.
and you've done such a good job with your kids and all these tools that you're sharing. Um did you I mean, was this really hard for you to come to grips with that you have a child that has some mental health issues?
I don't think it was the fact that she had issues. It was harder to not have answers.
Okay,
The
good,
unknown is really uncomfortable for
good.
me. I want to support her, and it's really hard to watch your kid in pain. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the hardest part.
Yes. It's really great that you answered it that way. And I'm glad you did because I know that there's a lot of shame and stigma that goes along with this.
Mhm.
And when I was, you know, still kind of trying to figure out how best to support Cole, I felt the same way. I felt like, we can't just be constantly medicating him on things like
Yeah.
what there's got to be other answers. There's got to be other
Right.
things. And and they weren't doing a lot of the things that you can do now, right? And
Yeah.
like we didn't have the tools. I mean, people have
Mhm.
tools now that are just so great. I mean, the EFT tapping, which we're talking about for everyone that's listening, is the emotional freedom technique. And it's basically, you can go on YouTube and Google it. It's everywhere. But it's the tapping on the different meridians of your body and acupuncture spots in your body. It's just like acupuncture, right? But it
Acupressure. Yep. Yep.
acupressure, yeah. And so, and when you're doing it, you're saying a positive, you're saying kind of what you're struggling with, and then you're
Mhm.
following it with a positive,
Yeah.
and then you're tapping in this spot for a number
Mhm.
of times. And so that was never around
Oh.
when Cole was diagnosed with the things that he
Oh.
was diagnosed with. And I just remember feeling, and I'm being honest when I say this, I remember feeling ashamed
Mhm.
that I probably more ashamed that I didn't know
Yeah.
what like, I didn't recognize
Yeah.
as
Like you as a
early.
mom should have had that answer baked
Yeah,
into you,
right.
but it's so unrealistic.
I
Like
know, I
nobody
know,
has that.
totally. But I just remember feeling like as a
Mm.
young mom, I was 27 when I had Cole, like,
Mhm.
I just remember thinking, something is off
Yeah.
with his anxiety, and he's so sensitive and he's so
Yeah.
emotional. And um everybody around me, family, whatever, was just like, oh, that's just the age. But there was
Right.
something nagging in me. And then I remember when we figured it out and we realized that there were a lot of things happening with him. There was number one, there was nowhere to really go and no tools to really help. But also, like, I just felt like I'd kind of let him down. I felt
Yeah.
like I should have figured this out sooner.
Mhm.
And so that's where I feel like the shame kind of set in for me.
Yeah.
And I'm past it now, but I really had to work through that. And so
Yeah.
it's so it's just so amazing to hear you talk about how you really have to advocate.
You
You're an
do.
advocator for your kids
Mhm.
in so many ways, right? We are like, if they're playing baseball or soccer or something, you're on the sidelines advocating for them to like the coach to put them in and this and that. Those are like the basic things. But like sometimes I think as parents, we're afraid to advocate for the mental health
Totally.
component because we're ashamed of it, or
Yeah.
maybe not because we're ashamed of our children, but we are ashamed of like the fact that we don't know how to deal with it. And
Totally.
what will people think? And what will parent
Mhm.
and you don't want to let your kid go over here to this person's house because you know that there's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to
100%.
explain it, right?
And I think that that is exactly what was kind of popping up in my head is like, so how often do you share that? Like how I think that's a really uncomfortable thing to figure out of like, okay, that doesn't define her at all, but I know that it does influence how she comes into situations.
Yeah.
So, do you tell their teacher? Do you not? Do you tell a friend because this might come up? Or do you not? Like, there's really daily, like, judgment calls on things like that. That's a lot. It's a lot to figure out. And you do have to just always go back to your own gut because it's so easy to compare yourself to somebody else that you see. And you're like, well, they've got it figured out. They don't have any of this stuff. Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of that comparison factor that you
Yeah.
just have to leave behind. And
Yeah.
also, you kind of said this earlier too, is like you have to let your kids to some degree have their own path in it too. Like there's a lot of things I know with certainty she would feel better if she did this, ate this, things like that. But she's 9 years old. She's going to push back and she's going to tell me that she doesn't want to do those things. And so that's okay. She'll come there in her own
Mhm.
time. But it is hard as a parent to be like, seriously, babe, if you did some breath work in the morning, I promise you'd feel a whole lot better for the whole rest of the day. But she's like, no.
I'm not going to do it.
So,
Yeah.
nope.
Well, I will say this, like I personally, my own opinion on this is that I think it's always important, and you know this about me, to talk about your shit.
Agreed.
I don't care if it makes somebody else uncomfortable. I
Yeah.
think it's very important that you talk about it because like, there were times in the beginning when I was around Sophie and there were things that she would do and I would think, "What is going on with her?" And
Hmm.
I would think that and I would think, "Why?" I mean, honestly, I think why is is Kris responding the way she's responding?
Hmm.
Because I didn't know.
Yeah,
And
it can
I
definitely like because I think of going into social situations, and she's probably a little more outgoing now, but she would feel so uncomfortable. I mean, she would be glued to my side
Yep, that's what I'm
wherever
talking
we,
about.
yeah,
Mhm.
she would be glued to my side. And I'm sure to anyone else, they're like, let her be, let her go and play with the other kids. She would not want to go play with the other kids. That is the last thing she wanted. She feels totally unsafe doing that. She feels 100% safe by my side, clung to me, which is exhausting. Like it's really
Yeah, for
tiring to
sure.
watch all the other parents like get to go have a drink, have a glass of wine and talk to their friends. And I'm like, nope, still got this little Klingon right here. Like she's not even small anymore. So it's things like that
Yeah.
that, yeah.
But when you talked about it and you shared that with us, with your circle of friends, and then like we've traveled together and I've spent
Mhm.
time with your kids, and I love your kids, and I think your kids love me, by the way.
They do. They do
Um,
love Auntie Dawn because she's
they
the
love me.
fanciest.
I'm the fancy aunt.
Mhm. Yep.
But like it really helped me understand Sophie a lot better
Yeah.
and I see her as such a highly sensitive kid. She is going to be, I think she's an empath
Mhm.
100%. And I
100%.
don't think it's fully developed yet, but I think she is an empath. And
Yeah.
so I connect with her on that
Yeah.
level. And I just think that talking about it amongst your core friends is
Yeah.
so important. It's
Yeah.
so important because there could be a friend in your circle of friends
Mhm.
who is struggling as well.
Definitely.
and doesn't know who to talk to, is afraid to talk to someone, or
Yeah.
maybe is watching you and thinking, well, she seems to have it under control now with Sophie.
Right.
What's she doing?
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that's why this conversation is so important.
It
And
is.
I loved the day when you left me a message, and I'm putting you on the spot right now, but I don't know if you have what you wrote, and you don't have to read it if you don't have it handy. But when you read to me what you wrote and kind of what was all coming to clarity for you about your company and this awakening of why you're doing this and how it's even more significant now because you're really focused in on helping moms in general, but moms with kids that have mental health issues.
Mhm.
When you left me that message, I was in tears.
Mm.
I was in
I
tears.
Yeah. Well, it was it finally all came together. I find, it was all of those many pieces from so many years, and realizing, there can be that feeling of like, who am I to talk about this? Like, I don't know. And then I'm like, no, I've lived it every day for 9 years. I know this. I'm good at this. I have
Yeah.
something to share here. I can support someone in this because there's a lot of support. There's occupational therapists. There's all kinds of support for the person going through it, which we need. But you know what? As the caregiver and the mom,
Yeah.
you need help. You
Yes.
need help too.
Yes. Yes. And that's the biggest component of your business, which I love. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this. Um, how do you and Andy handle this together? Sorry, we're not going to throw Andy under the bus, but
No,
men and
we won't throw
women,
Andy under the bus. Andy's an
men and
amazing
women,
dad.
yeah, oh, he's amazing. But men and women handle this differently.
They
So
do.
talk to us about your journey with in discovery with this with your husband
Yeah.
and how you guys navigated through that, because I think it probably would have been hard.
It was hard, and it was, it's not what you expect. It's not what you
Yeah.
anticipate and picture going into parenting. And I think he would be the first one to say this too. Like, he took a while to warm up to the idea of having a family. That wasn't something that he really, really wanted the whole time, where I
Right.
was. And so I think when you then get thrown challenges in it, you're like, oh, well, it's extra hard too. So like, this is a lot. So I think in the beginning, I credit my exposure to my relationship with my grandma, seeing mental health, and just being okay with asking questions. I think the hardest part was the unknown. He had a really hard time grasping, like, what does this actually mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I
what
get
what
that.
is, and I think, as a father and just as a man in general, like, must figure out the answer, and then we will do this. And as we all know, in the mental health space, it's not a quick answer. It may not ever be an answer. It may just be pieces of knowledge that you find, and it's not black and white at all. And so it's been actually really amazing, a complete fast forward. So he went from, like, when I was like, well, we should go to an occupational therapist, and he thought, um, right.
Yeah.
So he was very doubtful in the beginning, and then very much saw her transformation. But then fast forward to a year ago now, when we all got put in this little container of our house to live in nonstop together, where until that point he traveled a ton. And so it was the three of us girls a lot. And so we had our own little way of doing stuff. And
Yeah.
there, it was really interesting and eye-opening to see him be around us all the time. And like, so say Soph come home from an afternoon of doing something and just completely collapse and lose it. And he was like, what is she doing? I was like, well, that's what she does in the afternoon. Like, when she gets home, that's just what happens. And he's like, really? Because he never saw it. And so
Yeah.
it's been a really interesting eye opener. And I think he has so much more compassion for her, and so much more patience with her once he was able to move past a really fearful state of not understanding it.
Yeah.
because I was the one that went to the appointments. He stayed with our other daughter and took her to ice cream. I went and did the appointments. And so I heard firsthand everything that was told. And I did my best to relay that. We make a really good team, but you can only relay so much. And so it really took until I'd say this next round of like figuring out, okay, there's definitely some anxiety happening here. What is this
Mhm.
all looking like? And for him to really see that from discovering it a little bit to really being consistent with how we're approaching it, how we're talking to Sophie, the way we approach things, having a really united front where a lot of that fell on me before because he wasn't home to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, I think he has a lot more patience, a lot more compassion for her because he sees it day in and day out now.
Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't have any exposure to that in
No,
his life either. So, yeah.
no, not
Same
at
with my
all. And
husband. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
if you don't know anything else. If you don't know
No.
what it is, I didn't realize how much fear that causes, especially in a dad, until I
Yeah.
saw it kind of building. And then it was like, okay, well, how can we break that down so that you feel like you can show up for her? And then that was actually the easiest part of it. But it took finally figuring that out, that was a challenge for us. Like, we can't just keep pretending like it's okay. It needs to have some help.
And if you're in a situation where you have another child or a couple
Yeah.
other children, talk about that. Like, how do you
Yeah.
show up for both kids?
Yeah.
And how does Hadley feel about this? Is she understands what's going on with Soph?
She understands, I think, again, because we're in this little tiny pressure cooker of all of us together. She sees every time tough things happen, and they happen daily. Like, there's always an outburst. And
Sure.
so um, she's a tough kid, and I see her. Um, but she's really sensitive too. She's an interesting mix. She's really tough, but she's also really sensitive at the heart of it. So like she
Mhm.
picks up on I can tell that she listens from the outside and knows like, okay, well, we can get Sophie ice water now. So she'll go and get that now and bring
Yeah.
it, which
She's like the
kind of,
caretaker.
yeah, kind of breaks my heart a little bit that a 6-year-old is having to do that. But I also think she's there for us and she's really trying to help make it easier. She's not trying to make it harder. We do end up kind of tag teaming and like one person go with her and one person go with Soph and then swap so that we don't all have to, not everybody needs to be in the mix of trying to problem solve at the time of, but we also, to your point, do not hide it. Like we all talk about things all out in the open. There are no secrets. And we say that many times in our house.
Yeah, yeah. There's no secrets in your house. Are there secrets outside of your home? Have there been secrets? I guess there's not anymore since we're doing this podcast.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think there are like intentional secrets at all. I think, you might have like picked and choose who you talk to people about, like how much
Sure.
you talked about it, to what
Yeah.
degree. But I don't feel like we've ever really like completely shied away from talking about anything.
Yeah. Good. That's really good. Yeah, I don't feel like you have either, but I'm in your
Yeah.
inner circle, so I just wonder,
Yeah.
especially I just know from experience with Cole, like when he was young and that he would want to go over to a friend's house or he'd want to spend the night
Hmm.
or whatever. Man, those were I had more anxiety over those times
Yeah.
than anything because I just didn't know
Yeah.
how he was going to show up
Yeah.
and if the parents were going to be like calling me. And there were
Hmm.
some that would be like, something's wrong with Cole. Like
Hmm.
he's upset, he's crying, he's
Yeah.
angry, he's throwing things, you need to come pick him up, right?
Yeah.
And and not knowing kind of what he was going through at the time and all of the things that were happening in
Yeah.
his poor little brain,
I know.
um, we didn't know how to navigate through that.
No.
So sometimes if that's happening, you tend to just kind of keep quiet about it,
Yeah. Or
So
you kind of pull back from those things too. You know that that's going to be an issue, so you don't do sleepovers. I
no.
we I haven't really gotten to that point yet. I've been worried about it because sleep is such a hard thing for us, like the getting to sleep process, and she realizes
Mhm.
that. but then COVID happened. So I feel like she would have started asking for that right around that age, but then our world turned upside down and kind of took that away from her anyways. But yeah, and I think every kid handles it different. It's interesting that he would just be true to himself and just let that out. He couldn't keep it in.
Yeah.
She will tuck that in and then come home and just be a disaster. So,
Yeah.
just know there's like I think there's a lot of variety in how kids will handle that and show that to you too.
Yes. So how are you kind of as a family managing through the anxiety for her? You're doing the tapping, you're
Mhm.
doing she's seeing a therapist, right?
Yeah, we actually,
Um
and just know like there's a lot of options out there. So I
yeah.
know for us,
What
like
are they?
so we started with what I didn't know would end up being a pretty like traditional talk therapy with her.
Mm,
And in this environment, it was over Zoom. We never met the woman in person.
mhm,
And as much as I wanted to keep going because it was like having some effect, Sophie hated it. She would balk about it for
mm,
days in preparation of having to have that. And, there's the part of me that's like, okay, I'm the mom. I do get to make these decisions of how we're going to care for you. But at the same time, then I kind of got on board and was like, actually, this isn't a good fit for us. So, there's a lot of
mm.
experimenting in what works, and then maybe this works for a little piece of it, which it did for us. And then now we've transitioned to art therapy, and that's been
Oh,
1,000 times better. She
that's the
literally,
best.
and it's amazing. Like, so find the things that might be of interest to your kid and just explore that, because like to our point earlier of like she would cling to me, I'm definitely her like safe place. So like in the traditional talk therapy, we had to sit side by side on her bed the entire time while she like looked to me for answers. I was like, this is no good. With art therapy, she's like, see ya, mom. And she goes in her room, does it completely by herself, does not want me anywhere near there. I'm like,
Mm,
that's good. So,
yeah, that's really
you got to
good.
kind of watch those things.
You told me about a book, an anxiety book, a kid's book. Do you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
the name of it? What was it?
It literally is called A Kid's Book About Anxiety.
That's what it's called.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole series of books called A Kid's Book About, and then it's insert whatever it is. And so
Oh.
they're actually here in Portland, and it's a great book. I highly recommend it. And it's very easy to read to even a super young child. I'd say she's kind of
Mhm.
on the border of being like the older side of who you tell it to, but it really hit home with her. She found it in the store. She found it in our favorite Adorn store, and she picked it up and she goes, "Mom, this is me. Can we buy this?" I was like,
Oh
yes,
my.
we can."
Yeah, you're like, "Yes, absolutely."
Yeah.
Man, you are
Hmm.
so in tune with what's going on with her. I'm so
Thank
proud
you.
of you.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. I mean, that takes a lot of work. You have to do the inner
Yeah.
work
Hmm.
and you have to have your shit together to be able to deal with that. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
What what do you do in terms of like, I'm always worried about you as a
I
friend. I'm
know.
like, what are you doing to take care of you? So
Yeah.
let's talk about that, which I know again ties back to your business. But like, as we
Yeah.
kind of wrap up the podcast, let's talk about what kind of things you do. Like,
Mhm.
what's your day like to be able to get through the
Yeah.
tough times?
So I think my number one change for me that made the biggest impact was making a morning routine for myself.
Mm,
So I used to literally start the day with the kids waking me up, which just happens at whatever season of life you're in. When they're little, that just is the case, and whatever. Then you get past that. And I slowly started experimenting with getting up a little bit before I knew they'd wake up, and then a little more and a little more. And call me crazy, I get up at 5 a.m.
what?
And I do. So
Wow.
I get up at 5 because that only gives me an hour and a half by myself. And I will say again to like the introvert part of me, in the climate that we're in where we're all together all the time, I am completely drained by that by the end of the day. And so if I don't give myself that time to be whatever I want it to be, I show up in a totally different way. And it's true every Saturday and Sunday because I don't get up early, and I just show up a little bit different than I do on the days that I get up for myself.
Hmm. That's interesting
So,
because that is one of the things that you have in your membership that I'm a
mhm,
part of. And
mhm.
you remember I was telling you that it's hard for me
Yeah.
because I'm a night owl.
Yeah,
And so I do get up at 6:30. That's about, and
that's
literally
good.
it's not bad, and I'm doing it
No.
because I made the commitment in the membership to do it.
Mhm.
But I agree with you on the weekends. I'm like sleep I don't turn the alarm on, and I'm like totally
Yeah.
a different I'm a little bit less
Right?
motivated.
Yeah. I know. And I'm like,
But
it's not that I couldn't come up. So I always meditate in the morning. I do that first thing
me
when I
too.
wake up,
Yep.
literally pretty much like snuggle in my hoodie and put a blanket over me and meditate for a little bit. And then I have my coffee, and usually I like write and create during that time. But on the weekends, why on earth don't I come up and meditate in the morning? One doesn't
Yeah.
know, but I don't do it. And I wish I did. Usually by like the afternoon or something, I will. But I think that giving yourself whatever you can to start your day really does make you show up in a different way. I truly believe that.
So you're getting up early, you have a morning routine, you're
Uh-huh.
meditating. You also,
Mhm.
I know you're on the Peloton. Are we following each other on the Pelotons right
I
now?
don't know if we are. I don't have many friends on the Peloton. I have no
Okay,
idea. I don't need
we need
another
to.
social platform.
Yeah. Well, we need to be on there because I'm on
Yes.
it all the time too. And then you do what else? Yoga?
Yeah, I try and move my body every day in
Mhm.
whatever way that's going to be. I definitely don't ride the bike every single day, but that has been a true sanity saver for sure. So I do believe in whether it's stretching or sweating or whatever that is, do something every day because you never regret it when you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Okay.
definitely huge.
Good.
Yeah.
So, okay, as we're kind of wrapping this up, I want you to talk a little bit about your mind body collective, right?
Hmm.
The part of your deconstructing wellness platform that is specific to a membership
Hmm.
that people can participate in and what the content's like because of
Yeah.
course I always want to support my friends and especially you because you're special to me. And because I believe in what you're doing and it's just so important.
Thank you.
And I want to make sure that everybody knows about it
Yeah.
and can enroll and be a part of the membership, the
Yeah.
community, and you know what the benefits would be. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Definitely. So I can send you a link to check it out too. I open it a couple times a year. So if you join the wait list, there's definitely support between the times when it's open. So you can kind of get a flavor
Hmm.
for what I give. My whole hope in creating this membership was to give sort of like an in your pocket holistic health coach. So somebody who can be on your side and give you those resources. So again, you don't have to go looking for them. So I created a groundwork, which is basically 90 days of creating a foundation of wellness. And then every month I put out new content. And right now I'm basically picking and choosing my favorite aspects of my one on one coaching and putting it in like a group platform. So picking those lessons that I think are really like the most important ones and sharing those. And my whole goal in it was to make it really simplistic. So it's self-paced. You go in there and you might listen to a 5 to 7 minute video, and then you'll have some type of activity. And my hope is that that activity is what really solidifies that exercise for you. And you see if it's a good fit for you or not. And so
Hmm.
that's really what the Mind Body Collective is. And I just really, my hope is that it'll morph into going from simply those high level holistic practices to really supporting moms that are raising kids with mental health challenges, and what are those specific things we need to do to support ourselves in this, and then
Hmm.
also come together as a community and say, hey, none of us are alone in this. How can we support each other, and
Yeah.
how can we really empower one another, because we need that.
I just got chills and so excited when you said, because I haven't heard you say that in the tagline yet, about supporting moms that with mental health. I mean, that like warmed my heart right there,
Oh,
because
I changed my Instagram bio. It has that now today too.
oh my gosh. Okay. Well, what I mean, that right there is so beautiful, because it's not just moms with that have kids with mental health challenges, but
Oh,
I mean, right now, like, a lot of moms are dealing with that with COVID,
yeah,
and dads too.
yeah,
So
totally.
it's not like it's not a common thing, but I
No.
just love that you brought that up and you said it that way. It just warms my heart so much, because that was, to me, that missing component that we talked about in the beginning, that makes your membership so special, because you're coming from a place of sharing your own truth,
Mhm.
from a really open and raw um, place, with actual solutions
Yeah.
that you have found for your
Mhm.
own, your own peace and your own journey and self-love and self-nurturing and care, which easily is, accessible for people who become a part of the membership. But also, you're talking about tools for parents, for their kids, like
Yes.
things that are going on with their kids. So, and there's nothing out there like that. Just like, this, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just like there really has been nothing out on the podcast platform like this.
Yeah.
A mom telling a story of her shit and her her journey with her kids shit and all the
Mhm.
stuff and everything, and you're doing the exact same thing, and there's a
Yeah.
need for it, because
There is.
when you're in these moments of darkness, you you're curled up in a little ball bawling. Believe
Yeah.
me, I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have, but I have.
No, that's what, remember, I sent you that I remember specifically
You
saying that, like,
did
I
say
am
that.
there for the mom curled up in the corner crying by herself, because I've done it so many times.
That's right, you did say that.
Mhm.
I can't even remember how many times I did that. I mean,
Yeah.
even from when he had colic, and I
Mhm.
just would, like, leave him in his room, and I would just be in
Yeah.
the other room going, "Oh my god, I don't know what to do." I mean, it
Mhm.
started from there. I mean, I need a break. This kid's taken a lot out of me. This is
Is there
probably
not a
why
pause button?
this is probably why I've got candles and crystals and sprays and shit everywhere. I'm just like, come here, somebody give me a break. Um, but no, I legitimately, like, can't even tell you how important it is. And because you were out there probably doing research. No one's doing what you're doing, Kris.
No. No, I know. And it shocks me. Like, as I really started looking at it, once I really was finally okay with, like, here's what I have to share, here's what I can own and bring to the table, it was like, how is no one else doing this? Like, this is a major thing. This
Yeah.
is totally mainstream. How is this not being supported? It's
Did you
shocking
have
to me.
did you have like did you have a really cathartic moment? Like, did it just come out? Were you emotional about it? Like, give me the scoop.
It's so funny. So I had what was it? I had one of my business coaching sessions. So I met with Tony, and
Mhm.
then um she just was like, she was poking at it, and she was
Yeah.
poking at, like, what do we need to get to here? And I was like, I don't know, but it's driving me nuts. And so I remember hanging up and being like, Andy, can I go for a walk right now? And so I did. And I, like, stormed out of the house. I literally took nothing with me, which is unlike me. I'm usually, like, listening to a podcast or music or something. And I was like, no, I'm going on a walk and I'm figuring this shit out. And so I literally walked out the door and started tapping, full tapping on my face everywhere down the street. And I was like, praying and tapping and just saying, please let it come through me, because I could feel a lump in my throat. And I knew it was right there. And I was like, but why can't I find it? Like, this is so obnoxious. So
Yeah.
I literally trudged around Lake Oswego. And then halfway through, I was like, oh, but that's it. There we go.
Yeah.
And it was
Did you
like, just a light went off.
did you cry?
No, I felt so much relief.
You felt relief.
Yeah, I just was like, it was there all along. Like, how did
Yeah.
I not see that?
Yeah. Yeah. You're just
But I
weren't
didn't.
ready.
No,
You just weren't
I
ready.
wasn't ready. But then once I did, like, I just have felt so much freer and so much better afterwards, because nothing changed, but at the same time, everything did, you
Everything
know?
changed.
Yeah.
I think where your block was, from what I saw, was that
Hmm.
you were feeling you didn't want to feel shame for telling Sophie's story, and you needed to
Yes.
realize, and I told you that
Yes.
it's not her story. It's your
No.
story. I
Yeah. I
think
felt
that's
a
what you needed.
lot of guilt over even just sharing her oversharing, like, what's she going to be okay with 10 years from now or whatever it is. And then I was like, nobody knows 10 years from now. All I know is there's a lot of other moms that are going through this same thing and probably feel really alone and don't have any hope left in them. How can I change that? And so I know Sophie'd be okay with that. Sophie, my giant hearted little child, would never let anyone hurt. So I have this feeling that, like, I'm building this beautiful legacy for the two of us to, like, here's how we're going to help. Here's how we're going to help and do good.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you promised you would cry.
I know. I'm sorry. I would cry. Oh
Yeah.
geez. I just am so I'm just so proud of you.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
so proud of you, and I just love you so much, and I think everything that you shared today was just so relevant and so beautiful, and really brave. Um
Thanks.
really brave, and it just goes to show that, like, you don't have to have a tragic, horrible story to be open and honest and share, because this is a really different, this is a different story than my story,
Hmm.
and yet it's so powerful, and it's not any less important and relevant.
Hmm.
It speaks to a certain audience, and
Hmm.
it speaks to people who, if I had somebody back in the day who was talking like you are and telling this story, I might have approached things differently with
Yeah.
Cole, because I
Yeah.
might have heard, like, I remember listening to that podcast and hearing that woman talk about these things that are very similar to my son,
Yeah.
So it just feels just so beautiful and so right that
Hmm.
you are on the show and that you did this today. And I'm just so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for welcoming me in and making it a safe space to share it and all of that. So thank you.
I mean, you're my hero.
No, we're in
You
it
really are.
together.
You really are. And I'm so excited for you and for your business. And so people who want to get a hold of you, they can go to the website. You want to talk about that and your Instagram?
Sure. So you can head to deconstructingwellness.com and I can send you the link too. But if you go there, it's going to have all my blogs on there, and I actually turn those into podcasts too. So they're like under 10-minute me reading the blogs out. So there's a lot of great content in there if you just want to get an idea more how I kind of approach wellness. And then find me on Instagram anywhere at Deconstructing Wellness for now.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Cause there's a new name coming, right?
At some point there will be. So yes, yes.
Yeah, something that is really reflective of kind of all of this stuff, and I
Yeah.
know that the name will come to you. I know it
Yeah.
will, you
Yeah.
know? So, anyway, this was amazing.
This was wonderful.
I love you so much.
I love you too. Thank you.
I'm just so glad that I never gave up on our friendship all those years
I
ago.
know, all those 15 years ago, if you just let it go then, it would have gone nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks again, and, I'll make sure that we have all the stuff about your company and how to join the Mind Body Collective in the notes, and I'm a member,
I
and
mean, if you just want to hang out with Dawn, you
I
could join.
mean you should come just because 'cause I'm there, and my friend Angela and Steph, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of us,
It's
right?
great.
It's
It's
a
a
good
good group.
it's a good sisterhood. So, anyway, sweetheart, I love you. Thank you so much.
I love you. Thank you.